What's up, y'all? It's Ty back with another GOAT Greatest Peaks reaction. This one, Shaquille O'Neal. Shout out to Thinking Basketball for the video. Let's get it.
In the last two episodes, we've seen two-way big men dominate.
It's so annoying when your coffee is like too hot to even drink. Like right now, it's too hot. I can't even drink it. Why does that happen?
In the golden era of centers. But the last Goliath of that era was the biggest. Shaquille O'Neal.
He was massive.
O'Neal was, quite simply, the most physically overpowering athlete in the history of basketball, or maybe any sport. He was more nimble than players he outweighed by 100 pounds.
Come on, man.
And at his apex, there was far more to his game than just bullying people under the rim. But what were those other pieces? And
imagine being a fan in this situation.
Were they enough to make him the best offensive big man ever?
Go watch all of these videos, man. They're fantastic. Fantastic. 2000 Shaq.
Again, did he? Yep, he did. Almost put it in, too. Here's Bowie. Shaquille, what?
Imagine being at a game and seeing that happen.
Now, I've never seen that. The Shaq attack!
When he entered the league in 1993, Shaq was already a 300-plus pound physical marvel.
Come on, man.
Before O'Neal, Wilt Chamberlain was the benchmark for power on the court, but Shaq took things to a whole new level. After his rookie season, they actually needed to Shaq-proof the baskets, and by his peak years in Los Angeles, he tipped the scales at around 340 pounds.
Do you realize how big that is? 7'1", 340. That is massive.
His power game actually started without the ball. We rarely think of off-ball movement like this, but O'Neal created advantages by working for an extra 3 or 4 feet that made all the difference. With the ball on the wing, Shaq flashes to the post but is doubled, so moving it to the top creates an easier entry, and notice O'Neal sit down and drive backwards at an angle to get deeper. Same position here.
If he catches it that deep, it's over.
Only Reggie Miller sags to prevent a pass to Shaq, but O'Neal sneaks a step or two closer to the goal, and so when it's swung to the corner, Shaq again seals himself deeper to set up a dunk. This was decidedly different than Wilt, who often parked himself in a spot and waited in a fairly upright position for an entry. Right here, he could seal Bill Russell under the rim, but in general, he wasn't looking for positional advantages like this. And while some of this is specific to an era with less bully ball in general, it's also a difference in philosophy. When Shaquille moved across the lane, he was trying to get closer to the rim. Wilt would move more toward the ball. He doesn't duck in front of his man, but instead flashes to a spot like a finesse player.
He had way better touch than Shaq, that's for sure.
Ball reversals, for example. This is okay position, but changing sides allows Shaq to get a quarter step and then chisel
Plus,
out
when you're 340, it's a lot easier to get to the spots you want to get to.
A much deeper catch, and that's unstoppable. To prevent O'Neal from getting that step, savvier defenders took away his cut, but then reversing sides opened a new door because he was such a massive target.
Whoever that was guarding him looked like he needed to play at the YMCA.
Counters are similar to perimeter players cutting backdoor off an overplay. Only Shaq's counters were about grappling for position in the paint.
Why is Rick Smith's not in backside help?
Catches like this. If teams tried to overplay the baseline, he could spin out the other side for the lob. Remember, his defender is worried about Shaq getting inside that low leg to the baseline, where it's game over if he seals him off. Yet,
is his touch really that bad? Can you finish a layup, Shaq?
O'Neal's quick enough to punish that overplay in an instant with those light tap dancing feet. This is some basketball jiu-jitsu. Feeling more weight on his right leg and then rolling off.
I'm impressed by this pass, man.
The lob.
Such a good pass.
This explosive lateral athleticism is often overlooked in Shaq. Moving quickly at oblique angles was the basis of his power game.
Gosh.
He would drive through his victims from the hips to overpower them with angles, Wilt didn't have that same low base explosiveness to spin or pirouette quite like O'Neal. His footwork was stiffer and he lacked the handle to set up these moves, whereas Shaq's agility combined with his weight carved out so many of his easy buckets.
His footwork is really good for the size.
Shaq unleashed violence from the floor with his trunk and massive lower body.
Oh my god.
Wilt has said he was sensitive to being seen as a mere brute at the time, but Shaq leaned into this power as a way to displace opponents before he even jumped. Chamberlain was strong enough to have this effect too, moving players with his lower body, but it wasn't the norm for him like it was Shaq, who bullied players onto
I feel like it's the footwork. Like, I feel like Shaq just had way better footwork than Wilt.
heels like a basketball Yokozuna, turning 260-pound Tim Duncan into a piñata to set up this drop step.
That's over Duncan and D-Rob.
O'Neal had some finesse too. He's setting up the drop step, but Dikembe Mutombo stays square with him, so Shaq switches to the fade.
Oh my.
This was a go-to move for him for years, often spinning to the baseline like this. And because of his 7.5-foot wingspan and jumping ability, he could fire this over giant defenders like Arvydas Sabonis.
Okay, maybe Shaq did have a little touch in it. I didn't know if he did, because I hadn't seen nothing. But he did have a little touch. Okay.
He also had surprising range on this shot, not quite to the foul line. We'll get to that in a minute, but out to about 12 or 13 feet. While he liked the drop step or that little turnaround to his right, he also had a jump hook over the other shoulder. He's denied here on his cut across the lane, which triggers that ball reversal, but Dale Davis stays with him well, and Shaq just falls back on a huge jump hook.
So tough to guard.
It certainly was
he's
no
huge.
sky hook. Shaq thought that shot was uncool, but it was hard to defend given his size and speed off the floor.
That's what I'm saying. If you're that big, you do not need this guy hook.
Between his hooks, powerful
Why are the captions on? Turn them off.
and fadeaway,
Turn them off.
Shaq was an all-time great playoff scorer. At his peak, he posted some of the best
32,
adjusted numbers
basically
in
31.
league history, trailing only Michael Jordan in number of stretches at this volume,
Jeez.
and doing so on similar efficiency. I do think Shaq added a different dimension with his off-ball game. He racked up nearly 750 makes from close range in his MVP season, an outlier
That
since
is
those
so
records
nuts.
have been kept back to 1997, and about 2/3 of those shots were assisted by teammates, which lands him between the 75th and 80th percentile historically. During the Lakers' three-peat, Shaq didn't even attempt a shot outside of 15 feet in the playoffs, and
Why
nearly
would
half
you?
of his shots came right at the rim. So he lived off a diet of the highest percentage attempts in the sport.
It's like if you don't have a big that can guard him, though, you're cooked.
He added even more value without the ball as an offensive rebounder. His low post positioning battles organically segued into offensive rebounding position. Here comes that cut across the lane. It's jammed nicely, but Jackson lingers to double Shaq. So now Sam Perkins has to help off him, and the bull is loose in the China shop.
I mean, that's what you gotta do. You just gotta hack him.
Some of his prowess on the glass was just wedging himself near the hoop and out jumping people. His 7'7" wingspan helped here.
A lot of these are against really good bigs. Like, I'm seeing Tim Duncan, I'm seeing D-Rob, I'm seeing Dikembe.
So did his incredible springiness for someone that size, and he cleans up this mess with the sledgehammer. Again, check out his feet on this play and how his twinkle toes let him reset into a bunny hop multiple times. It was almost unfair to be so nimble.
I don't understand how he's so quick, like, to jump at that size. I don't get
at
it.
size, and boxing him out was unenviable, and the Shaq-proof basket works. Teams tried all kinds of tactics. In the 2000 Western Finals, Portland went with the tag team holding method, but even those kinds of tricks weren't foolproof. Okay, that's not right.
Let me hear you say, that ain't right. It ain't right.
That Blazers team was really the only
That's
defense
nuts.
to slow down O'Neal during the three-peat years, swarming him regularly behind the giant Arvydas Sabonis, who was about 7'3" and 300 pounds himself. Sabonis had the mass to keep Shaq from completely overpowering him, and the basketball IQ to overplay that baseline move he loved. He also tried to deny Shaq's cut across the lane, making him catch it 3 or 4 feet farther out.
I mean, that's the thing. If you can make him catch it at 10 to 12 feet and don't let him back you down, you're fine.
That makes a difference versus the Diesel.
Jeez.
A more realistic way to slow Shaq down was to foul him. There's the traditional method where he's in close, or the legendary Hack-a-Shaq, where teams intentionally fouled him at the end of the quarter. It often felt like Shaq was playing on a Nerf hoop, and the downside of that was at the line he shot a Nerf ball. I've never understood how deliberately fouling a 53% free throw shooter was a winning play. That would be great half-court offense back in those days. Although when Shaq was powering up...
But then he can't offensive rebound either. Like, that, I think that's a lost kind of thing. Like, if Shaq's taking free throws, then he's not going to be able to offensive rebound. So
next to the hoop, 53% was way better than the 75% or so he shot at the rim. Because of this, he put entire front lines into foul trouble, forcing playoff teams to keep unskilled bruising bigs on their bench just to buy minutes against him.
Which you'd have to have.
So Shaq's attack warped the entire game like few players ever have, but were the other elements enough to make him the best center ever?
I'm not gonna lie, Shaq's defense should be elite. Like, he should be one of the all-time great defenders.
Present, Shaquille O'Neal, who turns 27 tomorrow, not bad. That's it from the forum. I'm Lauren Sanchez, back to you.
Part
what
of
in the
the
world
benefit
was
of
that?
Shaq's positional sparring is that it led to quick-hitting catch-and-shoot plays, or in his case, maybe I should say catch-and-dunk plays. And by scoring immediately, he didn't take away many opportunities from teammates by monopolizing the ball. If Shaq wasn't in a position to catch and go, one card he could play was the repost, giving the ball up to find that superior position without dribbling. This was a natural bridge between his scoring and playmaking, where if he felt a double team in these spots, he quickly kicked it out and could repost, but if that didn't lead to deeper position, he'd play the same game again. He was quite patient in these situations, waiting for defenses to commit to blitzing him, and he would move it to the direction the help came from to punish them.
Like, especially if you know the double team's coming.
Double drop down from the top, Shaq surveyed and comfortably tossed it back out to a teammate. If it came from the opposite corner, right away he looked to that corner, and in general he was really good at attacking the location of a double team. Allen Iverson doubles off a different Laker, and Shaq gashes it, and then still cleans up the play himself.
I was going to say, that's a tough layup, but then you can't give up the offensive rebound.
That rebounding.
Look at Shaq.
He could work his way through progressions, too. Here's a double from the top, but New Jersey shifts its defense to take away the basic kickout, so Shaq looks to the cutter, and that's picked up well, which leaves the skip pass to the
That's
opposite
such
wing.
great offense.
Notice how he swivels his head when he catches an entry so he can see the action unfolding and find the optimal play. And his processing speed in these spots was quite strong. He spots the double before he lands here and then holds the defender with a no-look pass. Again, watch his head before the ball hits.
Because this is what makes the great players so tough to guard. Is when you double team them. If they can kind of abuse it.
Hands, he's
like,
serving the floor.
That's what
so
makes
he
players
knows
great.
The lane is open if his cutter has half
Jokic,
a step and
Embiid.
hooks up Robert Horry with perfect touch on a bounce pass. Shaq was willing to try tighter passes in the paint like this. He sends this to open space in the middle of the lane
Such a good
with a little
pass.
hop and a soft touch. Shaq was right-hand dominant as a passer, treating the basketball like a dodgeball, and that led to some limitations or awkward deliveries at times. He would occasionally throw one too hot or miss his target like this.
Jeez.
Although he also had some brilliant deliveries too. This looks like a skip pass, but it's a changeup that drops perfectly to a cutter.
That was a good
And on
pass.
this play, he sees Iverson fall asleep, and those giant hands make this touch pass an easy bucket. Some speedy neurological process.
I think it's more of his mind. Like, Shaq's just a smart basketball player. He knows teams aren't just going to let him go one-on-one.
Also helped him audible at times. He's flowing into a catch and shoot here, but switches to a pass at the last second after spotting a double, and as Coach Bird can attest to, that is just too good. For my money, Shaq is the best low post passer among the great 90s centers, but there were some holes in his vision. He could miss openings on the opposite block. He threads it once he sees Horace Grant, but a great pass arrives 2 seconds early.
He was late on that read. But
here's that same action again over Shaq's left shoulder, and he's blind to it, and this is a connection that excellent post passers make most of the time. Similarly, he could also miss the baseline cut from the same side of the court, and I think this is the trade-off of conditioning himself to spot the double team instead.
I mean, yes, he's maybe missing these passes, but those are tough passes. Like, only Jokic nowadays is really making those passes out of the post.
Of holistically reading the floor. He misses the easy layup here, but is quick to hit a spot-up shooter. Since he was quick to react to doubles, his teammates had some wide open threes. This is
Can
similar
this
to
dude,
what we
Derek Fisher, knock down a shot, please?
saw last episode with Akeem's Rockets, where surrounding him with capable shooters punished double teams,
Finally.
and dotting the arc with these players, and even a stretch four, optimized Shaq's inside-out value. Outside of a white-hot playoff run in 2001, those Lakers were never really a good three-point shooting team, but they had enough respectable shooters on the court to space the floor and keep defenses honest, which allowed a more defensively slanted supporting cast to play off Shaq while maintaining those offensive heights.
To me, though, like, Shaq knows when he's got an advantage in attacks, and when he doesn't, when he is double teams, he makes the right read.
As a result,
That's what I'm
LA's
seeing right
attacks
now.
were very good in the regular season and all-time good in the playoffs, able to maintain
That's
their
crazy.
regular season efficiency against those super stingy playoff defenses of that era, because almost no one had a way to slow down these
The Big
Shaq-centric
Diesel.
offenses. With Shaq on the bench, the Lakers' playoff offensive rating dropped by nearly 12 points during those three-peat runs to about 98 points per 100. Even a young Kobe Bryant couldn't carry that kind of roster with a replacement-level center subbed in for Shaq. Although Froby was a great fit next to O'Neal, he was already an elite offensive wing who could playmake and generate his own shots. With Shaq probing for position, teams were less likely to throw defensive attention toward Kobe, who already had
Because, I mean, yeah, if you got Kobe and Shaq, what are you supposed to
a
do?
bevy of isolation scoring moves to unleash, and because of Shaquille's off-ball activity, he didn't take away many touches from Bryant. O'Neal fit incredibly well next to penetrators like this because his defenders were so reluctant to leave him near the hoop, and this gave Kobe a little more airspace when attacking the cup. When bigs were
him in the rim,
forced to
Kobe.
help, it freed up Shaq on the glass for cleanup duty. What a ridiculous duo they were. I also think there was a strong fit on defense, especially when Bryant was at his defensive peak in the year 2000. Shaq could be statuesque at times, not venturing far from the lane and often dropping deep on pick and rolls. And Kobe's ability to chase ball handlers over screens and at times hound guards at the point of attack shored up O'Neal's stationary defense.
Bro, Shaq is not moving at all right now on defense.
And the Diesel could be stuck in neutral for entire possessions. He stretched that 3-second rule on both ends. And despite Kobe's ball denial on Iverson here, they still give up an open jumper. There were a bunch of reasons why Shaq just camped out in the key a lot. First, his defensive strength was protecting the rim, especially against smaller wings who challenged his
He didn't get
massive
that
frame
rebound.
and his giant reach. And when he was loaded up and in position to contest, he could get to shots like this quickly. Second, he
Good
was
Shaq.
conserving energy. It takes a lot to move 340 pounds around the court,
Yeah, it
and
would.
Shaquille was asked to play 43 minutes per game in the playoffs at his peak, and in his condition, he lacked the motor to do that while stepping out to the perimeter on defense, or even sitting down in a stance and moving more in tight spaces. There were a number of instances where he was slow getting back in transition, jogging down the court at a leisurely pace, and in some instances he never really made it back into the play. And in their playoff
I mean, in his defense, Sabonis wasn't making it into the play either, so.
matchups, the Kings had some success running him until fatigue kicked in. Also, Shaq parked himself in the paint because his change of direction wasn't swift enough to make recovering easy, and he wasn't fast enough to help down from the outside like the last two centers in this series. On offense, he could dictate where all that mass went, but having to react on defense wasn't as easy. He's not agile enough to toggle around here smoothly, and kind of bear hugs his man and ends up on the wrong side of the play. All this was compounded by inconsistent awareness, where on some plays he was a bit slow to read potential threats, and on others he was...
I feel like defensively, obviously the statistics were okay, really good 96th percentile, but he's 7-1. Defensively, he doesn't look too great.
Sort of asleep at the wheel with a play unfolding in front of him. This shows up when we look at how opposing teams shot at the rim when O'Neal was on the court. Opponents shot slightly worse than average in 2000 and at exactly average in 2001, which is a far cry from elite defensive big men like
Rudy Gobert would never allow that, Shaq, just to let you know.
the Spurs Twin Towers or the Georgetown centers. On the plus side, teams didn't take too many of these high percentage shots in the restricted area against O'Neal, probably due to his intimidation. In other words, there was some benefit to him lingering in the lane. Many opponents didn't want to challenge Shaq's shot blocking or take the physical punishment he could dish out on hard fouls. On occasion, he would shift into fifth gear and string together really active defensive
Look at that on
possessions,
AI.
leaving the paint, moving his feet, and giving us a glimpse at what his defense would have looked like with a high-revving motor. Of course, most of the time he roamed around the lane like a grazing elephant, so teams with jump-shooting big men would punish him on the perimeter. Shaq did not want to switch onto wings and was reluctant to come out on them. Here LA sends extra help and it leads to a clean three, and teams would go at him in pick and roll, leaving his teammates on an island against the screener and ball handler, and Shaq's reluctance to venture out.
I mean, bigs nowadays don't really venture out either too much. I mean, sometimes they're forced to, but a lot of times it's what they want to do.
Allen Iverson in his famous 2001 outburst, and the ultimate example of this was Mike Bibby's pull-up jumper parade in the 2002 Western Finals that nearly unseated the Lakers. This also made it really easy for big men to pick and pop their way into wide-open jumpers.
Yeah, that's the tough
So
part.
when teams started torching LA like this, they would bring Shaq up to the level of the screen, where he could contest pull-ups. This was actually a major tactical adjustment in that
shot.
big Game 7 comeback in 2000 against Portland, and there's one of those high-energy defensive possessions. Note that most of these shots then were long twos, because there weren't many pull-up three practitioners in the league at that point. In
Steve
2000
Smith
and
goat.
2001, the Lakers posted a 103 defensive rating without Shaq on the court, slightly ahead of league average. With him, they were about 2 points better.
I mean,
and more complex.
That's a pretty that's a decent impact.
Adjustments for teammates and opponent quality. View him as a solid positive on defense in those seasons, although not a star. We see a similar story looking at his missed games, the same method we used back
Defensively,
in episode 2,
he looks pretty good,
where
but
in
not great.
25 contests as the only starter missing, LA was almost a 500 team. But when Shaq returned to the lineup, they played at a 62-win pace. Most of that change was on offense. Equally as impressive is how the Lakers fared without Kobe in those years. In 29 games, where he was the only starter missing, LA
They were
played at
good
a
without
54-win
Kobe.
pace, with an offense nearly 3 points ahead of the league. And that's without a playmaker replacing Bryant, a testament to Shaq's offensive floor raising.
I genuinely think you could run your whole offense through Shaq. Like, he doesn't even need another. Like, as long as you have some shooters around him, he's fine.
D roster. Similarly, one-number impact metrics rank him among the all-time greats, primarily
Really good.
because of his offensive value. To me, there's enough value from that paint protection for him to be a decently positive defender. He was even somewhat effective as a man defender during those years, just based on his size and sheer athleticism. and the overall nature of his offense, which
the
was
spacing is in the first percentile, which makes sense. But overall, I mean, the way he was able to just run and control the offense is so impressive.
off ball, quick hitting, and so difficult to slow down, made him unique among big men in NBA history.
Because a lot of times you can slow down big men, but not stop them. Shaq's the type of guy, if you don't have a guy that can guard him, even close, like if you look at this year's NBA, how many teams would have somebody to guard Shaq? Not very many. And that's the thing. He is unstoppable.
And gives him a strong argument as the most dominant big man ever.
Outside of Wilt Chamberlain, offensively, he probably was. He probably was. I don't think there was anybody better. Let me know your thoughts. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new. As always, man, I love you guys. Have a blessed day.